Hey bookworms, welcome back to my channel. Today we're diving deep into the life of one of the most badass writers of all time, Mary Shelley. I do a lot of research into various authors' lives, and I have to say Mary Shelley is among the most interesting and fascinating that I have ever learned about. So today I'm going to share with you 9 facts that you may not know. Mary Shelley essentially invented the science fiction genre. Frankenstein is generally credited as the first science fiction novel, and its impact on the genre can't be overstated. Can we just take a moment to appreciate how unlikely that is? The fact that Mary Shelley, a female writer born in the 1700s, invented science fiction. That alone is remarkable, but the work itself is just plain good. Frankenstein is insightful and thought-provoking, but somehow avoids being overly morally didactic, which was pretty rare for writers of Shelley's time. The themes and questions in Frankenstein are so fundamental to life itself that I think just about everyone should read it at some point. Mary Shelley's parents were both radical and famous. We need to talk about Mary Shelley's parents. Shelley's father was William Godwin, a famous writer and philosopher of his day. He embraced philosophies of anarchism and free love, famously calling marriage a system of fraud and the worst of all laws. But that didn't stop him from getting married to no less than Mary Wollstonecraft, one of the most famous suffragettes of all time, and the author of A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. She penned such radical declarations as "Strengthen the female mind by enlarging it, and there will be an end to blind obedience." And taught from their infancy that beauty is woman's scepter, the mind shapes itself to the body, and roaming round its gilt cage only seeks to adorn its prison. Mary Shelley sadly never got to know her mother, who died only 11 days after giving birth to her due to childbirth-related complications. It's known that Mary did study her mother's writings, and some have identified themes in Frankenstein that seem to have been inspired by her mother's ideas. With parents like these, Mary Shelley seemed pretty destined to live a rather interesting life, which is exactly what she did. Mary Shelley had a real-life evil stepmother. Okay, maybe not quite evil, but there definitely was some drama. Raised by her single father, Mary Shelley was close to her father, that is, until he remarried. Like the classic fairy tales, there was apparently some tension between Mary and her stepmother, and a bit of a competition for Godwin's affection. To keep the peace, William sent Mary off to Scotland to live with another family for a few years. In one sense, things turned out all right if you consider that the scenery of Scotland inspired some of the iconic moody settings found in Frankenstein. At the age of 16, Mary ran away with a married poet. At 16, Shelley fell head over heels for the married romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was one of her father's protégés. Scandalous! When they met, Mary was 16 and had just returned from 2 years living in Scotland. Percy was 22, a man who'd already earned his bad boy reputation by getting kicked out of Oxford University. Word has it he wrote a pamphlet promoting atheism and then refused to admit it. Their passionate love story was full of drama, elopement, and eventually tragedy. Interestingly enough, Mary and Percy chose the graveyard where her mother was buried as the location of their secret lovers' meetings. It was in this cemetery that they declared their love for each other and decided to run away to Europe. Some stories even claim that they literally consummated their love right there in the graveyard. The pair ran off to Europe in 1814, taking along with them Mary's stepsister Claire. Being a free love advocate, Percy continued having affairs with multiple other women simultaneously, something that caused Mary a lot of pain and heartache over their years together. Though her father was a vocal advocate for free love and unconventional relationships, it was a different thing entirely when it was his own daughter running off with a married man. He actually cut her off financially until she was properly married to him, which she was at the age of 19 after Percy's wife committed suicide. Mary Shelley penned Frankenstein when she was only 19. This is something that rocked my world when I learned it. Frankenstein is not only a Gothic masterpiece, but a deeply philosophical novel that explores questions like the origins of good and evil, the existence of God, the impact of solitude and social rejection, and the contract between creator and creation. To have that level of not just creativity, but also deep insight while still a teenager is just simply astounding. Frankenstein was inspired by a writing competition with Lord Byron. In June of 1916, Mary Shelley and her husband were on a European tour with some other prominent romantic writers of the age, including poetic rock star Lord Byron. One night in a cabin on Lake Geneva, Lord Byron challenged everyone to a writing competition. Who could write the best ghost story? I busied myself to think of a story to rival those which had excited us to this task, Shelley writes in the introduction to Frankenstein. While others put forth their stories readily, Mary took her time. She stressed for days about what to write, but when inspiration struck, the result was her very first draft of Frankenstein. Percy encouraged her to expand upon the story, which she did over the next several months, including when they moved to Bath. Make sure you check out my video on visiting the really cool House of Frankenstein there. It's really worth the visit. Frankenstein the novel was published on New Year's Day, 1818. Interestingly, it may have been the Frankenstein castle in Germany, which the Shelleys passed in the vicinity of during their European travels, that inspired the name of Frankenstein. I've visited that castle. Let me know in the comments if you want me to make a video taking you on a tour of the castle ruins as they stand today. Mary Shelley's early life was plagued with loss. Shelley suffered a staggering amount of personal tragedy in her life beginning at such a young age. First, her mother shortly after giving birth to her. Then her half-sister and her lover's wife both committed suicide. Her own path to motherhood was also fraught with tragedy. Of Mary Shelley's 5 children she gave birth to, only one survived early childhood. Her first child was born prematurely and lived only 2 weeks. Her youngest daughter died at 1 year old, and the following year her son William died of malaria. In 1822, she miscarried and nearly died herself from hemorrhaging, only shortly before her husband, Percy, drowned at sea. All of these losses occurred by the time Shelley was only 25 years old. Mary Shelley also wrote one of the first post-apocalyptic novels. Mary outlived her husband by several decades and did much more writing during her lifetime. In addition to essentially inventing science fiction, Mary Shelley is also credited with writing one of the first post-apocalyptic novels. The Last Man, published in 1826, tells the story of Earth's last survivor in the 21st century after a plague, climate change, and armed conflict wiped out the rest of the world's population. And for our final Mary Shelley fact today, after her husband's death, Mary kept his heart in her desk drawer. Percy definitely didn't make life easy for Mary, what with all of his ongoing affairs and the children he sired and then abandoned, but she remained devoted to him. She survived him by nearly 30 years, but she still held dearly to his memory until her own death. After she died in 1851 of a brain tumor, Mary Shelley's surviving family members searched the contents of her writing desk. Inside, they found a box with the remains of her husband's heart, wrapped up in an excerpt of one of his poems, Adonais, which he wrote after the death of his friend John Keats. Percy was 29 when his ship went down in a storm off the coast of Italy. The story goes that when his body finally washed ashore, his friends decided to build his funeral pyre right there on the beach to cremate him. Surprisingly, they found that his heart would not burn, so they took up the hardened remains and eventually returned them to Mary, now his widow. So, there you have it, 9 fascinating facts about Mary Shelley, the woman behind the famous monster. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below, as well as any other authors that you'd love me to make interesting facts videos about. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You'll find all of my fun facts about authors, my picks for the best indie bookstores, and all of my bookish travel guides at awellreadwanderer.com. Until next time, see you soon.